All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 2. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. How we feeling?
Nostradamus there.
Yes. What? I don't even know where to start on everything.
I've got to own it too, though. I got to own it because I was right there on the Jamie Benn train.
You guys,
so we're gonna own this.
Dude,
I
so off last night.
The last, and I got to include this morning into my last 24 hours. I said the Celtics runaway train, blow out the Heat. Completely wrong. Then I said Jamie Benn, best player on the ice. They absolutely get buried 6-0. And then I turned into Dorf on golf this morning, and it was obscene. And Noodles, you should have seen this. This was like the Field of Dreams of golf. If your ball went in the rough, it was like Field of Dreams, Ray Liotta just disappearing in the cornfield because you couldn't. Hazy B was like, he hit one. He was so fired up. And I started out blistering. This is me today. This is me.
Tom Kite.
That's me, Tommy Kite. And I just looked at Hayes and I said, I'm done. I quit. Play it again. I want to see myself again. I want to see it from the beginning.
The worm burner?
No. Every shot in Hayes would. That was me because I'm like, I've got to put this thing in the fairway. And I absolutely was snort hooking it and blocking it, and I just got in my cart. I've never wanted to quit so much in my life. But Field of Dreams, poor Hazy B, one hole, he hit a butter drive, and then some kind of butter 5-wood layup. Mm-hmm. This thing was 2 yards off the fairway. It was gone. Field of Dreams. Into the cornfield.
Well, did you play a course?
We played Oakdale, so the host of the RBC Canadian Open. We're going to be out there next week. Right. So we thank Golf Canada, our friend Lawrence.
Yeah.
In Oakdale, there was nobody out there. Like, this was Field of Dreams. We were the only people.
So basically, it's your golf course.
It was our golf course.
Most beautiful place you've ever seen. And me and
Unbelievable.
him, absolutely. We should have been told to quit golf forever if anyone was in the trees watching that.
If we had a caddy with us, that caddy would have put us in a chokehold and said, chloroform, and you're leaving, and you're banned. Because they're growing the rough out. They're going to cut it down, but that's how you prepare for a championship.
So it is
tournament.
It is weeds, like it is.
Yes, they're like growing it out like crazy. Then they're going to manicure it. It'll be beautiful by go time next week. But we are the dummies that went out there thinking, and we were playing from like the tips early on because that was kind of the agreement. We'll go out, we'll test it out, we'll play as if we're pros, and we're not pros. And the thing is, like, was a great golfer, but he was doing things today I've never seen him do before because mentally, dude, it just sucked the life out of you.
Is it intimidating seeing that grass right there? You know you're going in.
You know, like, he was yelling, that's dead. The millisecond it was off his club.
I only said, I didn't converse with you all day.
No.
I would hit a shot and I only said one word, gone. And I just got to a point where I'm like, I can't even look for that because
it's gone.
It was somewhere around 14. I hit a drive. It was like 10 yards, a little bit right in the rough, and it's just gone. And you got my hopes up. You're like, found it, TSN logo, hole 9. I'm like, I don't have that on my golf ball.
Wasn't your ball. There was a TSN ball, a straggler out there. TSN, someone that works here was sloshing it around Oakdale at some point in the last couple of weeks.
Hayes, I take pride in like playing a tough course, Pinehurst, Pebble, wherever it is. I started out, I rip one down the middle, knock it to 20 feet, knock it down. I'm 1 under after one. Mm-hmm. I rip one down the fairway, rip it to 10 feet and miss a birdie putt, rip a drive. And after that drive on the third hole, I was a 78 handicap. It was outrageous.
It really was. You were even par on the 4th tee. You were 1 over, I believe, on the 5th tee.
And then it just went south.
And he finished.
I shot 130.
It was
130.
You were so far. Party. You had so many X's on the card. It was crazy.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it was a game of X's and O's with your kids. Just X's and O's.
Yeah.
X's and O's.
So that's how his day went today. And then, of course, online, people are writing me saying, hey, are you with O? Like, what does he make of Jamie Benn now, who was legitimately the worst player on the ice last night?
Yeah, he only played like 13 minutes.
He barely
was dashed
played.
Too.
Like, Pete DeBoer looked at him and said, I can't play you. That's how awful you are. His line got caved in by that Carrier line last night. Colasar. That line, credit to that line. Credit to Bruce Cassidy because he starts them and goes, set the tone for us.
That was a full court press. From the drop of the puck. They couldn't get it out, and it was a gong show. I shut it off after 4.
Oh, they did. It was a terrible hockey game. Hockey game. Like, Dallas did not show up. They did not show up. And credit to Vegas, who are really well coached and a really good team, and they're a proud team. They showed their character last night. They obviously didn't play well in games 4 and game 5.
Right.
And they didn't get down. They didn't allow it to put them in a position where they started cheating or feeling as if, we're in trouble here and showing any sort of nerves. They showed up with a purpose last night. That game was over 14 minutes in. It's 3-0. Pete DeBoer, our boy, like, he had Scrabble face behind the bench. He was so mad, Pete DeBoer. You could tell he was furious.
He was steaming after the first.
Yes,
somebody butchered something, and Wyatt, the kid Wyatt Johnston, got left alone in front and looking at the puck. And he was giving somebody a death stare at center ice. And it was game over.
It went south. But, credit to Vegas. They were the faster team. Like, Dallas looked like their minds and their legs weren't going. But it was because Vegas was moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like, they were on top of pucks. They were physical. Aiden Hill, I said this to the grappler earlier. Like, I don't know if Aiden Hill made a save or not. Like,
I don't remember.
I don't think he was tested last night and had to make a difficult save. And that's a credit more to how good Vegas was last night, how poor Dallas was. But it was just, Hill is a good goalie.
He's in a cup final.
He didn't have to be brilliant. And, yeah, they're right. They're in a cup final. I don't know. Like, Florida might have their hands full here. Like, I'm looking at it. And, again, all they've been is underdogs.
I said that against Boston, Toronto, Carolina.
Yeah, you're right.
How is it any different than the previous 3? You could argue this is the easiest series they're going to have on paper.
Yeah, I mean,
like, based on what we've seen out of like Boston. I don't care what happened, and I know it was a month and a half ago. That's still number 1.
Right.
I don't care how well Vegas is playing, and they got mojo and all that. Boston was the juggernaut of juggernauts, and Boston was up 3-1.
Yeah.
And Florida came back to win that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the cream of the crop. That's at the top in terms of something that no one was suspecting would happen and no one saw coming. Leafs, Carolina, Vegas, I think you can all kind of throw together.
Exactly. Coin flip. Like, Carolina was a top-tier team. Leafs was a top-tier team. And Vegas was a top-tier team out west with 111 points and went through 5 goalies.
Yeah.
That's the crazy
part. What's the fan duel? Who's favored?
Vegas minus 140. So they're favored. It's not a massive favorite situation. No. You're getting plus money, though, for Florida to win the series.
Starts in Vegas, too. Bill Foley will be in this helicopter.
Oh, yeah. He'll be shooting something today.
It'll be.
I'm guessing the helicopter coming over the cliff will be. Well, there'll be a new chapter for the Cup final.
Let's take the non-Canadian, all of that angle through. It's kind of cool because there are coaches and players and organizations that have never won a cup here. So for the first time, you're going to see this. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Vegas, 6 years into – this is the insane
their
part.
Second crack at it.
6 years into existence, their second crack at it. They've got a chance to win and are favored. And Florida, who went to the finals, was that 96?
I think
96 on a miracle run, the rat run there.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're back. And, I played in the organization 1 year. I've got a lot of friends there. I've got friends on both sides. But it's a neat story. Bill Zito, we talked about it. Bill Zito and his staff might have been on thin ice if they missed the playoffs that last day of the season. Yeah, that's
how quickly it can turn.
Right?
That depended on Pittsburgh losing to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Think about that.
It's insane. I mean,
and you got new coaches too, right? Like Vegas, they missed the playoffs last year, albeit it was in large part because of the amount of injuries that they suffered. It just felt like everything kept piling up against them last year.
Right.
But DeBoer out, Cassidy in. He's in a cup final year 1. Last year, Florida wins the President's Trophy.
Yeah.
Brunette out.
Yeah.
Maurice in. And now Maurice has got the Panthers in a cup final. So you got 2 new head coaches. who are in a Cup final. And you've got Matthew Tkachuk in his first full year and Jack Eichel in his first full year. Like when he was acquired, he didn't play a full year in Vegas.
Right.
I don't believe, right? Was it last year or was it the year before he got traded? I'm getting mixed up on that. I feel like this is the first full year of Eichel in Vegas.
Last year was his first year in Vegas, and he came back, I think, around – he didn't play the full season. He had to get the neck taken care of.
Didn't he get traded the year before, but that's kind of halfway through, and he wasn't even available.
And he wasn't available.
Right.
Anyway,
So
he's still – he's. I thought he played pretty well last night,
well,
but
he's
it
a hell
wasn't
of a
really
player.
about Jack Eichel.
No, I mean – I know it was
but you got
trending.
the American stars, new coaches. You got Southern teams.
Trending in Ottawa, Mark Stone leaving Ottawa.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up.
Some rumblings there that he wanted to extend and,
Eugene Melnick that wouldn't allow
previous
for it,
ownership
reportedly.
didn't want that deal to be done, whatever. Bottom line is it's nice to have, again, remove yourself the emotion of not having it in this market or in Canada. Some pretty cool storylines for first-timers. Eichel's never played a playoff game. He's playing in Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
Mark Stone, had a back surgery. That guy's a grit grinder. Like he is. He plays
he
for
sure
keeps.
is.
And, Aiden Hill, here's a goaltender that was fifth on their depth chart.
I still feel like he's not going to get any attention really in the Cup final, like unless it goes poor for him, which may be the first time possibly in Stanley Cup playoff history where he could win a Stanley Cup and play well in the Cup final, and still no one will talk about him.
Well, he'll get a contract from somebody else. What'll happen?
I know, but he won't be up for the Conn Smythe.
But the Conn Smythe
I think regardless of what happens, Bobrovsky's got a much better chance of Aiden Hill winning the Conn Smythe, and that includes a 4-game sweep, Vegas over Florida.
He's almost. It's no disrespect to the guy. He's an NHL goalie, and he's getting the job done. But he'll be a topic of discussion when teams are talking about winning with goaltending. If Vegas pulls this off, he'll say, well, Vegas won a cup with Aiden Hill in net.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he's always going to be mentioned, but you're right. I don't think he'll ever get the amount of respect or love that he actually deserves, Hayes.
Whether
you like him or it's just an unreal story or it's a fluke or whatever the hell it is, fifth-string guy, he's still getting the job done.
Yep.
And I don't know how he's doing it because I told you guys before, I flat out did not know who the guy was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I knew him. He's just a solid goaltender, but he's playing on a very, very detailed team defensively. And you've got two Norris-caliber defensemen back there in Pietrangelo and Theodore. And then the rest are mobile, they're mean, they're big. That team, that Vegas team, has size to them and meat to them and speed, and they've got everything.
Look at that one goal they scored last night, Jamie. Kolasar just bumped it off the wall and rumbled through the neutral zone and went right to the net. And it wasn't any turn-ups, toe drags, or nonsense or garbage. It was moving your ass in the neutral zone, giving go, and just playing north-south hockey. I continue to say it. There's all these ways and different ways of puck possession and all this stuff. But if you watch what's happening right now and what's working, it's pretty simple stuff, man. It's talented players, it's goaltending, and it's guys that want to get the job done. There's not a lot of fancy stuff. I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me something different. There's great players, Matthew Tkachuk, Pietrangelo, Mark Stone, Barkov. I mean, but is there any kind of stuff where you're like, oh, yeah, that's really fancy and that's really creative and that's cool? No. It's just it's forecheck work and great players making great plays.
They take what's given to them. That's really what I've noticed throughout the playoffs, especially with Florida, is they have skill. And for a while there, especially against the Leafs, they were looking to make that extra pass and maybe get into middle ice. But they play a straight line hockey game. They play hard in tough areas. And they do have a few finishers that are sneaky. Verhaeghe obviously is a 40-goal guy. But Reinhardt's a nice player. There's a lot of good players there.
Players are good players.
And they've got depth. That's the one thing that really does it for me, is both teams have a third and fourth line that are chipping in offensively, but they're tough to play against. They got speed. They're a pain in the ass. And again, we've highlighted it. The defensive cores have depth there and
they got
top end.
size, too,
exactly.
right?
Size, Ekblad's a big man. You forget how big he is, right?
Petrangelo's big.
Petrangelo's big. That
the nature of the position, it's always been the case.
Yeah.
Yes, ideally, like cup contending teams, they generally have the one guy who's like a Norris caliber defenseman.
Right.
Both sides can check that. And then they've got a collection of players who are big and mean in the playoffs and take up space, because it is about forechecking. And a lot of times that's what we talk about. Well, that's effective, the forecheck. Why is it effective? Because that means you're beating the defenseman off the puck.
Yeah.
Like, that's the element of a forecheck. That's how you define it. You get in, it's a race. Sometimes you beat it with your legs, but a lot of times it's just a physical battle. Who's going to win the battle? Well, and the best way to basically find a way to stop the forecheck is have defensemen who can get to the puck, win the battle, and move the puck.
And what you were talking about earlier, it's style of play. Like, we are seeing, and that if there's a copycat league, if this is a copycat league, you could argue that style of play might factor in coaching. Possession is a big part of it. But if you're trying to play a full possession game, look at Carolina. Look at Florida.
Yeah, but
look at Vegas.
Tampa Bay Lightning, Jamie. Look what they had to change. They had all the skill and they had the puck all the time. But guess what they had to address when they figured out they didn't have enough to get it done? What did they have to address? Coleman, Goudreau. Guys like that had to come into the fold because they weren't stiff enough to play against. They weren't tough enough.
Yeah.
So it comes down to the same garbage every time.
Well,
it's like we're not reinventing the wheel.
Well,
the LA Kings had talented players. Chicago Blackhawks, talented players. But they played with an edge, and they competed, and that's the end of the line. There's no other way to put it.
Again, big defensemen. Like Tampa has had collectively the biggest defense, pound for pound, inch for inch in the league for years.
Yeah.
Like, it's not – remember that Darryl Sutter quote from a year ago where Sutter was talking about – I think he was talking about the Canadians back in the 70s, and he just said, go look. Yeah, they were great, but go look at their defense. Yeah, Larry Robinson's a mutant. Savard was massive, like just massive human beings. And like that is what it is every year. And like if you've got a defense core that eventually is going to get worn down, you're not going to be able to win.
Yeah.
Like, it's 100 years of data that shows you that. There's so many different things you can look at and a lot of different ways that factor in to get teams to a cup final and then whoever actually wins the Stanley Cup in the end. But if you look at like 100 years of it, I'll guarantee you a large percentage of the teams that win, you look at their defense, 6'3", 220, 6'2", 230. Like, that's what it is. It's just monsters back there.
Colorado wins it last year, and everyone will point to Samuel Girard. He wasn't playing.
He wasn't playing.
Sternum.
It's
Johnson, who's 6'3", 6'4". It was Jack Johnson.
Yes.
And Eric Johnson.
Who's a big dude.
Right, big guys on that third pairing. And then, Makar, obviously.
You bring in Manson,
player.
who's a big
Josh
boy.
Manson, hard to play against. Big.
Yep.
Like that's and Devon Tays is a big body as well. It is a copycat league. I look more about style of play. That'll be interesting for me if the Leafs end up moving away from Sheldon Keefe. Even if you keep the core four, are you going to ask them to play a different style of play? That would be high on my priority list.
You better be careful, Doodles. Maybe
GM,
some guys won't like that. Maybe they don't want to do that.
It's a style of play that we're seeing. That's what's consistent throughout the playoffs.
And the league is starting to make moves here, right? There's stuff going on. Spencer Carberry, who's been an assistant here in Toronto, he's out. He's on his way to Washington. He's taking the gig. Now, I don't know how many Leaf fans could pick him out of a crowd because of the way the Leafs operate. Right. God forbid an assistant coach actually looks in a camera and smiles. Never. That's team policy. Only the Leafs, because they know better than everyone else, right? No assistant coaches are allowed to ever show life in the city. The guy's been here. He's been successful enough to get another gig in the league and wasn't allowed to speak. Wasn't allowed to be in front of a camera, which to me, I'd like to see the next GM come in and say, enough of the garbage. Like, who do we think we are? Yeah. Who do you think you are that's how you operate? Only the coach can speak, and no one else is allowed to speak. And
I would like
only
to
the
see
main GM, who doesn't speak either. Like Dubas, and I don't think it was just him, but the last year and a half he was here, he didn't do anything. Never went on any shows, didn't speak to the media, didn't do anything. And that's neither here nor there in terms of the way they build. But I think it should be something that they should address and look to possibly change in the
I think
future.
that if you have a new manager, you can have a new mindset as to, listen, it's a big market and there's a lot of people pulling you a different direction.
Sure, and you've got to be careful with that.
Certainly be more visible. That's what visible might be the word.
And get your messaging out.
Right.
And when in doubt, come out and speak and give answers on why you made that trade or why you did that signing. Kind of the same stuff that every other GM did before this that I think is more than capable of happening in the future. Yeah. But Carberry was hired. John Hines out in Nashville. Andrew Brunette going down there. It sounds like the Rangers are possibly moving towards Laviolette. Who knows? Gerard Gallant possibly leaning towards the job in Calgary. We'll see. But this is what we were talking about earlier in the week. Like, the Leafs are still trying to go through the pecking order. The rest of the league is doing their work. Right. Like, the rest of the league is not going to wait for the Leafs to figure out if they want a new coach or not.
They can't.
Of course not.
People have to get their business done, man.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if Sheldon Keefe is going to be here, okay, then it's not that big of an issue. You figure out who your GM is. He's going to work with Keefe, and so be it. But if the plan is for Keefe not to be here, you're way behind in interviewing coaches. Like, a guy like Peter Laviolette is a really good cup-winning coach. Maybe he's not your guy, but you probably want to interview him, wouldn't you? Like, if you're looking for a coach, wouldn't you want to get a chance to chat with Pete?
Brendan Shanahan and you've decided to move past your coach, then you probably have your sights set on somebody.
Somebody like a Laviolette, maybe a Gallant, something like that, to at least chat with them to say, what do you think about how we operate here?
It's basically saying that the Sheldon Keefe is not going anywhere because you would be insane not to have let him go by now. Although there was a coach fired this morning. Or yesterday or whatever.
John Hines.
To think that you would leave guys like that you just mentioned out there, it's like, who's going to be left when you actually let him go if you do that? Which tells me he's probably staying.
Well, I think you're working on a timeline. Again, we established it was 10 days. Now it's 11 days. Like, I think you could probably be looking into next week before you firmed up a lot of decisions. Now, doesn't surprise me. It's pretty quiet in Leafland. Wouldn't surprise me if June 1st, for some reason, hey, this Thursday, they might do something or something comes out this week or maybe into next week.
Stuff is happening, right?
Stuff is happening. And the new manager should be afforded with what's already in place. And he can make the decision whether he wants to work with Sheldon Keefe and his staff or move away because he might have somebody in mind as well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm fine with that. But you do, like I say, you get a little antsy when you're watching other organizations go, all right, we're plucking this guy, we're plucking that guy. Now, Carberry, young, progressive coach, but he wasn't going to be the next guy here.
No, I don't think they were going to keep him instead of Keefe. I don't think that was going to be the case.
I mean, you're all right to move away from that situation, but you're right out of respect for Sheldon. If he's not going to be your guy, I think you move past him and you let him know sooner than later.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Bianca Andreescu just won her match over at the French Open. She is through. Advances to the second round, getting past Victoria Azarenka. Was the 18th seed. That's big. She had dropped the first set, too. She was down a set, wins 6-3, 6-4 the second and third set. So she is through to the second round. Shout out to Bianca. Hasn't been a great start for the Canadians. Felix is already out. He was banged up coming into the tournament. But Chapo, our boy, he's through. Shapovalov, he's doing some damage over there on the clay. So we'll track that.
Gets fiery.
As he should be. All right, so we talked about the playoff game in Dallas last night. And it was not anything to write home about. In fact, it was a disaster of a hockey game. The NBA game was no better.
Oof.
And I was on the Celtics winning that game. I wasn't sure they were going to blow them out.
The other guy was, too.
I thought they were going to win on the money line last night, but I wasn't convinced they were going to blow them out, but it was a complete opposite.
In my defense,
I think it's worse. I think it's worse. I actually think it's worse. You guys can agree or disagree. The Celts climbing all the way back, bringing it home for Game 7 and losing, then
getting swept. Yes, 100% agree.
Or actually, like the outcome of I just don't know how you bring that home and lose. Like I think it would be less worse if I don't know. I don't even know how to explain that.
Especially in that fashion, right? Like if it's a great game where they both show up and Jimmy Butler goes off for 50 and gets you in a final possession, that's one thing. They were never in that game. Never.
Oh.
Like Miami from pillar to post dominated last night. And like their shooting was abysmal. And Boston, you push all the way to 7, and that's how you perform.
Barkley had a quote at halftime. I was dying laughing. Like Barkley's quote at halftime, where he's like, the Celtics are making my head hurt watching them.
It was
they were
really
4
ugly.
for like 21.
They could not shoot. From 3, they could not shoot. They were terrible.
I felt bad. Now, Tatum rolling his ankle early on,
First possession of the game.
Yeah,
and that obviously had an effect. But still, they got blown up by 19 last night at home in a Game 7.
Yeah.
They put 84 points up on the board. That you just can't win like that. Dan Patrick's coming up. DP will join us. We'll ask him about that. If you're in Boston, would you have preferred to be swept? What does he make of Miami versus the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Finals? Lots to get into with Dan Patrick. So more on that, all the coaching carousel news in the NHL. It sounds like, a lot of rumors, reports out there about Dubas in Pittsburgh. We'll try to keep you updated on that as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Dan Patrick will join us here in a moment. Mike Johnson coming up later this afternoon. I think we're going to do our GM interviews.
Yeah.
And I think the Grappler brought in his new suit. Because he'll throw on the suit and he'll come in and pretend like he's dignified and, he's an esteemed gentleman.
His wedding suit?
It's the wedding suit, yeah.
Dude, he's married now. He's got to start acting that way.
Absolutely. It might be his only suit. Like he protected that suit.
With his life, now he doesn't care about it. Al's brother will be wiping his mouth on it later.
Well, he donated his tie to Al's brother the other night.
Yeah,
Al's brother was
not a chance.
Yeah, I don't think he handled it with care. Put it that way. But it's all good. Everyone had a good time, and we're into the Stanley Cup Finals, and we're in the NBA Finals now, and got Miami, Denver. After what was an abysmal performance by the Celtics last night, we've been debating, would it have been better if you're a Celtics fan? Would you have preferred they just got swept? You hear him every morning here on TSN 1050. It's the host of the Dan Patrick Show joining us back on Overdrive. Here's our good buddy, Dan Patrick. How would you answer that, DP? If you were from Boston and you were a Celtics fan, would you prefer they got swept or they lost in the fashion they did last night?
I got to get to a Game 7. I just do. Even though they looked horrible last night and it sort of exaggerate all the problems that they have, you at least got there. If you ask LeBron James right now, would you rather get swept or at least gone to a Game 7? Now, the answer might be different for him because that's about a legacy. Mm-hmm. Everything that he does or doesn't do, Michael Jordan either did or didn't do. As for the Celtics, they're young, but I think just getting to Game 7 again, and they did that, with Philly, too. They just didn't learn from it. So I would say give me 7 or give me death.
Dan, I saw a tweet today regarding the NHL Finals, and it was like, do you think these two markets is good for the game? And, I found it funny because whoever wins, they go to the finals. Like, do you buy into any of that? Regardless if it's major markets for television, it's like you win and you're there, and there's nothing anybody could do about it.
Well, I think you want to fall in love with the story because we can tell a story every day. It's when there's no story to tell. And the fact that you can say Florida is just sort of like the Miami Heat, didn't expect this, and they're here. The Golden Knights have been, a pretty successful franchise in a, 6-year period. Mm-hmm. It's not going to sell nationally. And I'm trying to think what would sell nationally for non-hockey fans. And you may not have that. If it's the Bruins going from wire to wire, being one of the greatest teams of all time, maybe. But you really need stars.
What about Heat Nuggets?
Well, you do have the Joker, and you do have Jimmy Butler, but you also have a sport that is more widely recognized in the United States. Therefore, you're going to get a better audience, bigger audience, as far as what you have with hockey. But with hockey, if you kind of capture the imagination of you've got to see this, then people will watch. Otherwise, it won't matter, I don't think, that much.
Well, and obviously, brands come into play when we're talking marketing and markets itself and the size of it. And that's why it was so close to Lakers, Celtics, which is L.A., Boston. It doesn't get any bigger than that. But I would argue the players that actually made it into the finals, for me, it's more compelling. Yes, LeBron, we understand what he is, and he would have been trying to add to a legacy. I think Jokic is trying to solidify one. That, to me, is more compelling. And I like Tatum, I like Brown, but I find Jimmy Butler way more interesting. way more interesting than both of them combined. I'd rather see Jimmy Butler on the biggest stage than Tatum and Brown. Where do you stand on that?
If it's the Celtics and Lakers, it's a no-brainer. That's going to sell. You bring in all the former players. You bring in history. You got the archival stuff there. It's LeBron getting closer to Michael Jordan. To me, Joker is not exciting. He's just devastatingly great. Jimmy Butler is exciting. He shouldn't have been the MVP last night. It should have been his teammate. But I don't know if that's enough that's going to capture the fancy of the basketball fan. But if you had Celtics, Lakers, and LeBron's, in the States, anything with LeBron is news, one way or another. He had a cryptic message about, is he going to be number one on the or your list all time, and what happens when I leave, or quoting some Jay-Z song. It becomes a topic. Nothing Joker does, unless, he was going to get into a fight with the Phoenix Suns owner, is going to, have people go, it's must-see TV. If you watch him, I play with guys like that at the Y. They score all the time. They make the right pass. It's a bounce pass. They box out. And you're going, how does that guy do it? Not exciting, but, hopefully on this stage more people will see him to appreciate just how great he's been.
With Dan Patrick, you referenced that LeBron cryptic Instagram post right before tip-off of Game 7.
Of course.
What was this now? I didn't see this. What is this?
It was about, basically, take advantage while I'm still here, because that's kind of how I interpret it. You'll miss me, and you may not recognize it now, but when I'm gone, you're going to miss me. As if anyone was posing that question. Again, getting ready for something else.
Was it equal or worse than his message to little Bronny himself?
Nothing will match him writing, in retrospect to his former self. But when he posts like that, Dan, and he does it all the time, do you think he does a good job of promoting himself, or does he just set himself up for ridicule?
I think he's as calculated as any athlete I've ever met. And I've been around for 40 years, so that's encompassing quite a few egos. He knows what he's doing. Just like they got swept, and he immediately said, I got to take time. And, athletes have done this later in their career. And then he gives the exclusive to ESPN, that, he might be considering retiring. So instead of people focusing on they got swept, they focused on, oh, my God, what's LeBron saying here? Do they need to go get Kyrie? People completely forgot that they got swept, and it was about LeBron. Is he going to stay on? Can they get Kyrie? What kind of changes? Do you trade Anthony Davis? I thought it was brilliant by him. This last one, I'm like, come on, LeBron, you're better than this. And I even said after he got swept, LeBron needs a hug. He really needs somebody to tell him that they love him. And he's a great player and done wonderful things for the game. It felt like a cry for help.
Is Jamal Murray getting enough play here? I know everyone talks about the Joker and obviously Jimmy Butler, but is Murray kind of getting lost in the shuffle?
Yeah, and I thought he could have been the MVP in the Western Conference Finals, because I expect greatness out of Joker. The reason why they haven't been back is because they haven't had Jamal Murray. It came back from that knee surgery. And he'll be the reason why they win or lose this series, in my opinion, because he can be that much of a difference maker. Miami doesn't have a consistent number two guy. They got, role players, obviously, but so does Denver. It's Jamal Murray can take it to another level. And to come back from what he's come back from has been a really remarkable story. They're just a great basketball team in a football town, and people just don't want to talk about them. And certainly nationally, but I forgot he went to Kentucky. And usually my, default answer is, that guy must have gone to Kentucky, since there's probably 40 guys in the NBA. And it just reminded me of, he was at Kentucky and he wasn't really a great player. Devin Booker was at Kentucky, wasn't a great player. Bam Adebayo was, like, you start going, Tyler Hero, you're going, oh, my God, they had so much talent, they won one title. So I think he's just gotten overshadowed a little bit by Joker and the fact that it's still a football town.
We're chatting with Dan Patrick. You've sat down and done interviews, countless amount of interviews throughout your career on your own show, in person, Sports Center days. You've been there after Super Bowl victories. That Joe Mazzulla in Boston is something else, man. His interview between the third and the fourth quarter was such a waste of time. And then after the game, there's a viral clip going around of him chatting with someone from NBC, I think, in Boston. And it's excruciating. And you can tell the reporter's so uncomfortable because he's making it so uncomfortable. I'm sure you've been in that situation before. How can you possibly make it compelling if a coach like Mazzulla is just not interested in ever giving you the time of day?
I can't make you compelling, but I can compel you to give me something. And I think it's in the phrasing of the question. I just want Joe to expound upon something. You can't give him a close-ended question, because if you do, he'll give you a yes or no. I got to find a sweet spot there. Popovich mastered this. I mean, he was a jerk on purpose, because he was saying basically to the NBA, F you. I don't want to be doing these. I'll do it. I have to. But Joe Mazzulla, I don't think he's going the Greg Popovich route. I just think he doesn't have anything interesting to say. And I think he's in over his head, too.
Yeah.
To be fair to him, this is a guy who should be an assistant coach. And, he was kind of thrown into this. And at times he looks like he was thrown into it. When he's telling his team, you guys better bleep and smile tonight. What does that mean? I can't imagine Pat Riley or Red Auerbach going, all right, or Phil Jackson, guys, you better bleep and smile tonight. How about you better bleep and win? So I don't find him compelling. The fact that he watches, what's that Ben Affleck, Matt Damon movie? The
Good Will Hunting?
Good Will Hunting?
No, what is it? The Town. Yes, The Town.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that's the most compelling thing we've heard out of him, or interesting things.
Right.
And to me, it makes him stranger. It's like, dude, how about you watch some game film instead of watching The Town 4 times a week, which he claims.
Right. And it's kind of depressing. Like, is he smiling while watching that movie? It's not funny. There's nothing funny about The Town.
It's killing people's in bank.
Yes, exactly. It's really kind of harsh and dark and deep. Somewhat maniacal if he is laughing about that. Maybe it explains everything in the end. Tom Brady, the owner, does that pique your interest at all? And if so, what might that look like down in Vegas?
It doesn't interest me.
No.
It only interests me that he's sort of in the on-deck circle of, does he defer that opportunity to be a minority owner because he wants to play? Tom is kind of morphed into the LeBron James category of, I love this, I need this, pay attention to me. And you're not getting any attention as a minority owner, but you're getting a boatload of attention if all of a sudden Jimmy Garoppolo can't play, and here comes Tom to the rescue again. So I wouldn't rule it out. With Brady, I never rule it out, because I still think there's that possibility, because they don't have a good plan B if Jimmy Garoppolo can't play. Brian Hoyer or whatever his name is, and some rookie out of Purdue, that ain't doing it. So I could see Tom wanting to play another year and then becoming minority owner of the Raiders.
Yeah, it's amazing, though, like him getting to Vegas, who have already established, they've been there for a couple of years. By all accounts, LeBron's got his eyes on an expansion team in Vegas. Like, when you consider the sports world and how radioactive Vegas was, just 15 years ago, let alone, 30 or 40 years ago. And now you could have, the biggest superstar in NFL history, maybe the biggest superstar in NBA history, both with their eyes set on ownership in Vegas.
But then you also have the Oakland A's that'll kind of level things out.
That's very valid. Yes.
But you know what? You look at it is interesting, though, that city, because I remember talking to commissioners, whether it was David Stern or Bud Selig, when are we getting a basketball team in Vegas? When are we getting a baseball team in Vegas? And they kept saying, well, it's the gambling. It's the gambling. It's the gambling. Well, I always thought, and said this out loud on the show many times, once these leagues got their piece of the gambling, then, no pun intended, all bets are off. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to have teams in these cities. And that's what's happened. So I get the migration here, but I don't know why Vegas would want the Oakland A's. I don't know. An NBA team, because they have the summer league there, I get it. But if you're saying, wait, we want to, I'd rather have an expansion. Well, maybe they are than the Oakland A's, but they got 30,000 seat stadium, which I do love. Therefore, it always looks like it might be half full. But I just that one surprises me. But it's all gambling. They solved it. They got their piece. Now they want to encourage more gambling.
Yep. That seems to be the case. He is the host of the Dan Patrick Show. You hear it every single morning right here on TSN Radio. Always great catching up with you, Dan. We appreciate you finding time for us. We'll do it again down the road.
Thank you, guys.
You got it. There's Dan Patrick. Yeah, the A's, it is different, too, with baseball. Like, Vegas sells out 41 games. If the NBA goes there, that's 41 more games. 81 games is a lot, especially in the height of summer when it's so hot.
Yeah.
Like like going to a game, there has to be AC. It's got to be. I haven't seen the full breakdown of the stadium.
It can't be an outdoors. It can't be an outdoor.
It can't be in
I'm
July.
telling you right now, this is the argument we had about the Golden Knights going there. That city knows how to promote.
Yes, they do.
They know how to have in-game, whatever that's called, entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
They will make that baseball team the coolest place to go. And they'll have hot tubs in the outfield. They'll have it'll be insane somehow because they will hand it over to some, group.
Genius.
Yeah, some group that knows how to promote.
Yeah.
Are they going to be the Vegas A's?
That's a good question. They might change their name. I don't know.
I find that when you go to Vegas, there's so much to do. Again, it's not like you're punching and go, I've got to get to dinner at 6:30. You eat at 9:30.
Noodles.
Go to dinner whenever you want.
The guy sitting to your right, when Vegas moved there, the hockey team said it would never work, and no one ever goes to Vegas to watch a hockey game. He said that.
And they're in the Stanley Cup final for the second time. And the other thing is, I've been to Vegas 100 times. And it doesn't matter. You can do something at any time you want.
There's no set schedule unless you're going to a show or a game or something like that.
But what I'm saying is you're going to be able to go to – there'll be people that will go to a baseball game because the Yankees are in there or the Red Sox. And, hey, I'm going to fly into Vegas for a night and watch this. They're going to do it.
And, Hazy, before we go to break, if you want to, you can bring out my golf game today to anyone you like. But don't go too far away from – you were doing some weird stuff out there, too. All right?
Yeah, but I put it together down the stretch, and you know that.
What?
You know I put it together down the stretch. I had myself a back nine. Like, we moved up tees. I shot 41 on the back, which
is
with that
respectable.
course and that setup, that's with a double on 18. I was on fire on the back.
Yeah.
And you know it. You weren't playing any of the holes. You were sitting in the cart. But I was finishing out everything. I didn't lose a golf ball in the back until 18.
When we come back, I sent the grappler a picture that I want you guys to break down. Joe from the Bridge has it, so we'll put it up
we'll
when
try
we
to
come
break
back.
that. We will get to that. Confirm and deny is still to come. Mike Johnson will join us. Darren Pang coming up. Got big news in the hockey world, big news in the NBA world. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Mike Johnson coming up in about 10 minutes. We're giving away tickets all week to the RBC Canadian Open. We're going to give away a pair this afternoon, right, Grapples? We got a pair to give away between now and 7. We were there, checking out the site today. Everything's setting up beautifully. The weather's been spectacular in Toronto. And we're going to be there, Noodles.
Yeah, next week.
The fourth hole, it's the hockey hole. It's a par 3. It looks phenomenal. I took a picture of it, actually. I should send it to Joe from the Bridge. The 14th hole, sorry, it's on the back.
Right.
And, it's going to be a great setup. Great setup, and we're giving away tickets today.
Very excited. You guys know me. I'm on the outside when it comes to golf, but that week was phenomenal last week.
Yes.
We had a lot of fun. I might bring a golf glove. I might wear the glove.
I think that's
I
imperative.
think the Monday we all go glove.
Yeah, glove.
We have to.
On the show.
Okay.
But we got, I believe, didn't we get like golf garb? Like I felt like I'm going to have to wear that TSN golf shirt and all that. I think they had some
we had
stuff there for
tailor-made
us.
stuff.
It was awesome.
Tailor-made gloves,
Visor.
hats.
I might wear a visor.
Yeah, we got to get our hands on all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think we're decked out in golf gear all week. That's what kind of makes it great. You can wear hats, you can wear
it'll be
golf
Let's
shirts,
hope
you
the
can wear
weather's
whatever you want.
decent and there's no mosquitoes. That's all I care.
Yeah, I can't guarantee on the mosquitoes.
Were they out there today?
I didn't witness any. I don't remember. I was so preoccupied. My brain was in a blender about different things.
Really?
So
I'm not sure if Joe from the Bridge has that picture I sent.
okay, what are we about to see here?
Just,
How can we
I can't
describe
unsee
it on
Aaron
radio?
sent it to me on Twitter, and it's just funny. Like, I can't unsee that picture.
Tom Brady and Mark Davis mashup. Tom Brady with the Mark Davis hair.
Like, we were talking about going to Vegas. Like, could you imagine in the owner's box that guy's
Like that doesn't. That's not a guy who wins Super Bowls and is married to supermodels. I'm sorry. You put Mark Davis's hair on anybody, and it immediately changes every possible
the thought process about you.
thing you think
I
about.
thought there is no way in hell that guy was ever playing again. But with Jimmy G and that guy out there, I almost think it's 100% he'll be their quarterback.
Showing up.
Look at you. You are gutless.
I can just see him in a meeting room just saying, you know what? You don't need the quarterback's hurt. You need a quarterback. Well, I'm here. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it. I could just see him doing it.
So could I. I was adamant since the second he retired. I said, I don't believe this guy's 100% retiring.
Right. You were the guy who was on it.
Well, it doesn't matter until it actually happens. He's still technically retired. But if Jimmy G can't play and he's got ownership stake, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. Hour 2 coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.